So this is the time of year where people start slipping up on their health kicks. And if you want to kind of be done with these fads and diets for good, what I'm going to do now is give you a timeless system. This is going to be a building block approach to eating that is going to make a custom built diet for your body and your individual needs. So before we get into what to eat and things like paleo, keto, etc., first it's really important to identify the goal, because somebody who's trying to lose fat versus somebody who's trying to win a powerlifting competition will have very different goals and therefore very different diets. So the goal of this particular system that I'm going to show you is to increase your health span, which means the amount of time that you spend in good health with good energy, metabolic resilience, free of chronic disease, all of that stuff. And really with that then, that means the goal is metabolic health for as long as possible. Because when we talk about mortality for a moment, if somebody is overweight but metabolically healthy, their increased mortality is around 20%. However, if somebody is of normal weight but metabolically unhealthy, their increased mortality is 300% higher. So for most people, when they talk about this, it's to reduce weight. Yes, this is going to do that, but the real goal is metabolic health, which is how you handle energy. That is the real target. Because the reason that most diets won't work long term is because they haven't taken the time to understand you as a foundation and build from there. There are myriad factors such as these that can contribute or hinder your likelihood of success. So instead of learning about you, they force you into a template. We want to flip that on its head. Don't use the diet to learn about you. Use learning about you to guide your diet. And after I've showed you how to do this, at the end, I'm going to show you how to create a feedback loop so that you are constantly updating it to be right. So this system works in tiers, and we are going to assemble these building blocks in priority order. So much so that even if you just complete tier 1, that is going to get you a big majority of the way there. Everything beyond that is refinement, but even if you don't go the full way to the top of the tiers, just focusing on getting that tier 1 is going to be the most important thing. Now, this accompanies a free guide that I'm working on at the moment that's going to be on the Health Mapping Clinic website that you can download for free. I'm building it at the moment, so it will be in the description, the link to download it. If not, somewhere where you can email me to get an early copy. So let's look at tier 1, like I say, the most important block to get right. And it really asks 3 questions, which is, am I metabolically healthy? Am I eating the right amount for my body? And finally, do I have enough muscle? So the first question to answer, and the most important, is, am I metabolically healthy? And clinicians assess this by looking at something called metabolic syndrome. It's a cluster of interrelated risk factors that reflect underlying metabolic dysfunction and gives a clue for how likely you are to go on and develop the big 4 groups of diseases that kill around 70% of people in the UK. People with metabolic syndrome will notice these sorts of things, and if they look familiar, then maybe it's something that you should look at addressing, one of them being with your nutrition. So formally, you can diagnose metabolic syndrome by if patients meet 3 of these 5 criteria. You'll see that 3 of the measurements you can actually do at home yourself, but it's less important about the diagnosis, more of a general guide for whether your metabolic health needs attention. So that is by far the most important first question we need to answer. The second important question we need to answer is, how much should you actually eat? Calories matter. They might not be everything, but yes, they do matter. The more that you eat, and if you overeat, that leads to fat gain, which can lead to visceral fat around the organs, which can trigger a cascade of things that are bad for your metabolic health. But equally, on the other hand, if we eat too little for too long, it can affect our energy, our hormones, our muscle mass. So when we are calculating our energy requirement by going on an online calorie calculator, don't take it as an exact science, take it as more of a directional thing. We estimate, we measure, we adjust, and then we just keep going around until we hone in on what we think is about right. Treat it as more of an art than a science, but one of the ways that we can keep on track of whether it's right is to weekly measure our waist and our weight. And like I say, if you go and see the guide on the website for a PDF step-by-step of how to do this, it will show you exactly what you need to do. So the third thing is, have we got enough muscle? And by that, are we eating enough protein? This sits very high on the order of hierarchy, and there's a very good reason for it. The 2 biggest levers that you can pull to build and maintain muscle mass are resistance training and how much protein you eat. They stimulate muscle growth independent of one another, but when paired together work like magic. The guide for this is, for most people, it's 1.6 to 2 grams of protein per kilo of ideal body weight per day. It's given in 30 to 50 gram doses, which means 3 or 4 sittings throughout the day with a 3-hour gap in between. But most people underconsume protein, so don't worry if it takes a little bit of getting used to. The goal isn't perfection, it's consistency. But if you can just get these things right, you're already ahead of most people, because now we have some goalposts to aim for. For example, me, who's 80 kilos, all that means that is I need to aim for 2,400 calories per day, and I have 160 grams of protein. So basically that means 4 meals of 600 calories with 40 grams of protein. You can mix it match, it doesn't have to be exact, but those are the kind of rough guidelines that I need to aim for. Because that guides us to the next step, which is to purpose build meals according to these numbers with stuff that you can actually stick to, because this is where diets typically fall apart. So build a small rotation of meals that you can rely on. Think practically and intelligently about this. So what are you going to do on busy days when you're eating out, if all you have nearby is the small supermarket? Or how can you batch cook to make this a lot easier? Think of mental shortcuts that you can do to save yourself every time you need 150 grams of this having to go to the scales. Instead, if you learn things like a palmful of chicken or fish is roughly about 35 grams of protein and around 225 calories, then you can be a lot more consistent rather than being exactly perfect every single time. That level of approximation is good enough because adherence is a lot more important than being rigid or perfect. So that's the end of tier 1. And like I say, if you can nail that, you are the majority of the way there. The next tiers are more about fine-tuning. So the second building block we're going to put into our diet is how much carbohydrate you should have and what type of food you should be eating. Carbs aren't good or bad. The amount that we can tolerate depends from person to person, but also within the same person on what they're doing in the day. And these are the kind of things that can vary and affect how much carbohydrate you can tolerate. This is why the same diet will energize one person and destabilize another. And we shouldn't just be dogmatic about keto, paleo, and all the different types. It's where learning about ourselves with tools like a continuous glucose monitor can help us understand what foods and what amounts raise our blood sugar and fine-tune how much we can have. But CGM also tells you about when you can eat things. So I found out that rice sends my blood sugar crazy, especially when I'm on a flight, but I can still eat it after a workout. But the big wins here are simpler. First, learn about your carbohydrate tolerance and then match carbs to meet your activity. And reduce added sugars, especially fructose. And the second tier 2 item to tackle is ultra-processed food. Ultra-processed foods are packaged products made from refined ingredients and additives that are engineered through multiple industrial processing steps. They are usually very easy to eat and very hard to stop. But a good rule of thumb to recognize them is these 2 rules. First, if it's not using ingredients that you would cook with and recognize at home, then it's probably UPF. And also, if it's more than 5 ingredients, usually stuff that you don't recognize, such as this sort of list here, then it probably is an ultra-processed food. Because even if you swap out 1 meal a day by removing UPF food, it often improves energy and weight stability without needing any further restriction. So basically, if your grandma wouldn't recognize it, then try not to eat it. So once we're into tier 3, we are truly into refinement. And one of the things you can look at is your fats, not the quantity, but the quality of the fats that you consume. So of the amount of fat that you can consume, if you have about 50 to 60% of it be monounsaturated fat, things like nuts and olive oil, that is protective against things like heart disease and metabolic disease. It's not about fearing fat, it's about reducing of the fat that we take, the amount that is more of the refined type. Alcohol matters more than many people realize. It's calorie dense, impairs recovery, disrupts sleep, and temporarily switches off fat burning. And when the body is choosing a fuel source to use as energy, it goes to alcohol before fat, so it stops you burning fat if you're trying to reduce it. For some people, simply reducing alcohol is enough to unlock some of the progress that has stalled. So it's not really about abstinence, but more about understanding the trade-offs. And then finally, tier 4 is how we refine our fruits, vegetables, and our fiber. Now, not all fruits and vegetables are created equal. In terms of satiety, sugar load, fiber, or nutrient density, some are easier to overeat than others, and learning which ones work best for your body rather than chasing variety for its own sake is part of the refinement. And the final cherry on the top thing is experimenting with elimination. Most people would probably benefit from a period of time trying to go without one of alcohol, sugar, dairy, or wheat. It's really important to be sensitive about this by measuring, eliminating, measuring, reintroducing, and then measuring again. It doesn't necessarily have to be bloods and inflammatory markers that you take in a lab. It can just be subjective measures like keeping a diary of your energy levels, your mood, your recovery, whatever it might be, to see whether you notice a big improvement when you cut something out. If you would like to show some support to the channel that's completely for free, the best thing that you can do is to subscribe. Otherwise, if you want the free PDF that you can follow along step by step to implement this process in your life, go to the Health Mapping Clinic website where you can download it. Otherwise, if you'd like some more stuff to help you look at your long-term health, check out this video here. But otherwise, thank you for watching and I'll see you in the next video.